Hi, this is Daniel Villarino. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I have been to my home country recently, Uruguay, and when I came back I brought with myself several pieces of wood from different trees. Some of them are pretty green and some of them are somehow dry. One thing that happens when wood dries is that it begins to contract and it generates checks and cracks. And you don't want that, particularly if you are going to use it for turning, because it's very dangerous. So I want to talk in this video about this process, why this happens, and also different methods that I have been using to avoid this cracking, and when some of these methods work better than the others. This here is my virtual log. And as you can see, depending on the direction that you consider, the shrinkage that you have is different. For example, in the axial direction, the shrinkage is about 0.4%. When you consider the radial direction, the shrinkage is 10 times more, which is 4% approximately. And when you consider the tangential direction, which is the direction of the growing rings of the tree or the branch, the shrinkage is even bigger, it's about 8%. All these figures vary depending on the degree of dryness of the log, but they are mostly when you consider the process from green to pretty dry. When you look at the tree with a microscope and you look at the end grain, you will notice that the structure is like if you had several beverage straws all going in parallel in the direction of the branch or the trunk of the tree. In the inside of these tubes flows the sap, and mostly water and several other components. The walls of these tubes are formed with cellulose, which is a pretty rigid material. When the wood begins to dry, most of the evaporation occurs through the ends of these tubes. Because of this microscopic structure, what happens is that you don't have too much shrinking in the axial direction, but the size of the log reduces a little bit, and then it develops cracks in the radial direction, and you want to avoid that. These checks I want to show you. This is a piece of bocote, and you can see the rings running like this, and then you see that because it was not very dry, when it began to dry, it began to develop these checks, which are basically perpendicular to the rings. So the first thing that you want is to cut the log to avoid this checking, and then to cover the end grain in some mire. For big logs, what I do is I make two parallel cuts, trying to get the pit of the log in the center. And then from the middle section, actually I made two small cuts to just remove the pit, which is the most troublesome part. With that you end up with two very nice quarter-zone pieces, and then the two other parts which may be for ball blanks. If you have a small log, you may not have enough material to remove the pit, so I would recommend to make just one cut through the middle. And even if the log is very, very small, maybe you don't need to cut it at all. If you look it from the side, once you have, the cut made, what you want is to cover the end grain like shown here, and also a little bit of the place where you made the cut, but no the bark. How you do that? I basically have used three different methods for doing that. The first one is painting, and you can see here this is a piece of a log that I cut in half, and I'm going to use it probably as a ball blank, and I painted the surface and a little bit of this section here, which is where I made the cut, but you can see that it began to develop a crack there. So it will seem that this method has not been very effective in this case, although for the most part here is okay. So just removing this part, I can work with it. If I am going to just make a cut of like a turning square, and I want to save the remaining piece for turning later, what I do is I use a candle. This method is very easy. I just have here a piece of Gonzalo Alves, and you can see there that I have applied wax from the candle. I bought these candles from Michael's. You can get them from any arts and craft stores. What I do is I light them, and then basically I begin to burn from the sides, rotating, so that the wax is going to begin to melt, and spread it on all the end grain, and sometimes a little bit also on the sides. My preferred method, if I am going to be doing a lot of pieces of wood, is to use paraffin wax. This is one brand of it. It comes in blocks of 1 pound. This is what it looks like. This one comes in 4 pieces. 1 pound of paraffin wax cost me about $3.5. And when I paint the trunks or the squares with the paraffin wax, it looks like this. Many times I just paint the whole thing if it is like a turning square, like in this case, which is hormigo. But for logs, I just paint the end grain, like in this case. And this is a piece of Bradley pear that I cut a couple of months ago, and you can see it has not developed any cracks so far. The paraffin wax forms a thick layer and protects the wood from drying in that direction, so most of the evaporation occurs through the bark. The setup that I have is pretty simple. I have a metal bucket, and I already used this one, so it has paraffin wax inside. I have a brush. It's stuck right there, doesn't matter, because paraffin wax melts at about 97 degrees Fahrenheit. What I do is I begin to melt it in my stove, in my kitchen, and when it is pretty much melted, completely melted, then I bring it to the workshop, and I begin to do the painting of the pieces of wood. I have a rack, which is this one. It's like a plant iron rack. So I put it on the floor. I put this on top, like this, and then I have this propane torch in my shop. So basically, when I bring this from the kitchen, I just keep the wax melting by applying the flame on the base right there. So basically those are the methods I use. What I'm going to do now is just show you how I do it with some pieces. Okay, I have put the bucket with the paraffin wax on the top of my stove, and what I'm going to do is to initiate the process. I basically just turn on the switch right now, and I'm going to see how many minutes it takes to melt all this paraffin. I think I have probably 2.5 pounds inside the bucket, so I will give you an idea how long it takes. It has been 4 minutes since I begin the process of melting, and you can see that it's already melted probably half of it. So let's see how much longer it takes to melt the whole amount. Because paraffin melts at 98, 99 degrees Fahrenheit, as long as it is there is solid paraffin inside, the temperature inside the bucket is going to remain 98, 99 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can touch the handle without risk of burning yourself, as long as it is not exposed directly to the heat from the heater. So it's about to melt completely, so I'm going to turn off the heater. And now I'm going to bring it to my workshop. This is the bunch of wood that I brought from my trip. And to bring them in the bags, I wrap them in plastic wrap. So I'm going to unwrap them and begin the process of painting them with the paraffin. I'm going to start with these small pieces. Because they are small enough to fit in the bucket, and the whole batch of paraffin is already melted, what I'm going to do is just grab them and put them there, turn them, and put them there, and I'm going to leave them to one side for a moment, and then repeat the process. You can also apply it with a brush. This is a piece of catalpa, and it's pretty small, so I can fit it inside here. And basically what I do is I dip one end, I turn it, and I dip the other one, and then I just let it dry, and I will form a paraffin film all around. This is a piece of poplar, and it's too big to fit in the bucket. This is the end grain on one side, and this is the end grain on the other. So what I'm going to do is just place it here on the floor and use the brush. I'm going to dip it in the paraffin, remove the excess, and just paint it, and repeat the process. And you can see that immediately when the paraffin begins to cool down, it begins to form a film. Okay, for this method I'm going to use a candle. I'm going to just light it. And I'm going to pour the wax as it melts. And spread it with the candle on the top of the end grain. The idea is to cover the whole face with the wax. So this is how it looks. Okay, I finished painting all the pieces that I needed to paint, and the paraffin has begun to solidify. So if I need it, I can place it on the rack over there, and then basically use the blowtorch to heat it a little bit. It probably would have been a good idea to use gloves, but since the melting point for paraffin is so low, you just need hot water and soap, and you can make it disappear. Okay, that's it. This is one of the pieces. This one particularly is a Uruguayan tree. It's called curupai, and you can see I have coated both end grain sides and a little bit on the other parts, so that will slow down the drying process and hopefully avoid cracking and checking. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please comment, give it a like, and also subscribe. And until the next one, cheers!